You have to guess what he's saying.
And I'm mute Rod.
I was just teasing there. I was
Amazing.
Make it more fun.
right. It was the big tip.
Done.
That was it. Okay.
Well, welcome everybody to our team call. Thank you all for coming. All for coming to see Rod.
Yeah.
Get more on that we've ever had on our team call ever. So thank you all for coming, but most of all, thank you, Rod, for coming. We usually do recognition tonight, but we wanted to leave more room for Rod, so we're not going to do recognition. We'll do it next week. And also, since the first of the month, some people haven't necessarily finished qualifying, so there's a couple of things to come through still. So we just need to check on those things. So, yeah. So, do you want to introduce Rod?
Yeah, go on. I'll say something else.
Yeah.
So we're very excited to have Rod. Really appreciate your time, Rod, tonight. I first met Rod when I first was in the business, which was over 4 years ago. I'd been going to a few events in London, and no one was really ever else was there. It was like maybe 5 or 6 of us. And there's one London event I went to. I'd never heard of Rod, but this person Rod was coming. I'd heard. Yeah, I didn't know who Rod was. I turned up, and there was the most ever people at this London event. And this is when, remember, it was very small in the UK at that time. But I think there was at least 100 people in that room. So probably everyone that was doing doTERRA in the UK came at that time to see Rod. And, you were my first, I think I told you this already, but you were my first, big, massive impact on me about what doTERRA was. And it made me think, wow, doTERRA is a really good business. There are really good people doing doTERRA, and this is a serious business. And you really helped me get excited about it. I love how simple you put things in your explanation. I thought, you're a great presenter and also a lovely person. And seeing you again in Portugal, it was just lovely to reconnect and get to know you more as a person. And you've got a great sense of humour, and you're very successful at doTERRA. And so I really was very, keen to ask you to come on and share some tips with our team. And do you mind just sharing, first of all, just a little bit about you? I can't remember how many kids you have and how many diamonds you have under you, but I know you are the biggest or one of the biggest blue diamonds of the whole of doTERRA, which is huge.
The whole of the
universe.
The whole of doTERRA.
Well, I just wanted to say something quickly. Actually, when I wasn't doing the business in that first year, and she came and met you at that meeting, Rebecca came back and said, "Hey, there are these 2 cool guys." So I think it was you and Seth.
No, Seth wasn't there, actually.
Was it just Rod?
Maybe Roger as well. I can't remember.
It was 2 guys anyway.
Yeah.
It was definitely you, Rod. And she was like, she came back saying, "Nate, I've met this really cool guy. He's doing doTERRA and he's doing really good at it. And you can do doTERRA as well. You can do it." And I'm like, "Oh, really?
Cool guys do it, Nate."
Really? Is he really that cool? You are cool. So, thank you for coming on, Rod.
Over to you. We'll stop talking now.
No worries. No, I could listen to you guys all day.
No, our team are done.
Our team are done with us.
That's why they're all on the call.
That's awesome. So let's see. So you wanted to know the beginnings.
Yes, please. A little bit about you, like your past. You were into business, weren't you? Just a little bit about that background.
Right. So just quick family-wise, I have 3 daughters. My oldest daughter is married and 21. My middle daughter is out of the home and is 19, and my youngest daughter is 14. And so that's kind of, so I grew up. See, that's probably why I did so well in doTERRA. It's like I was surrounded by all girls.
That's why Nathan's good. We've got 3 girls as well. I think I probably told you. So yeah.
Right. See, it's perfect. It's perfect. You got it. You got this.
So that's all you need. All the guys on our team, if you haven't got daughters, go and have 3 daughters and you'll be successful.
Right. And then it's easy, schmeezy, peasy right after that. Right. So we had, so at the time, in the early days, I had another company where I trained distributors and network marketing companies all over the industry. And so that gave me a lot of insight into network marketing. And I would say that it was the first time that I viewed it as a legitimate potential business opportunity, and all that association inside the industry. And so it was kind of cool because I got to view all the good, bad, and ugly. And I recognized some consistencies. I recognized that there were successful people in every company, and that all those successful people were basically doing the same types of things. And so then I realized it was more predictable than the world makes it out to be. And probably any one of those highly successful people could be moved over into some, into another well-run company and probably would still be the top people. And so when I realized that, it's kind of like if you take a wealthy person today and you stripped away all their wealth, they'd probably be wealthy again in another 3 or 4 years. And so you kind of wonder about things like that. But it helped me to realize that being successful was just a matter of your mindset and your skill set and how basically your attitude and how you approach those types of things and your belief level. And so with that kind of background, then I don't know if you guys remember 2008 in the financial crisis. But during that time, our company sales of my previous business dropped by 90%. And so our ownership team made the decision for all owners and executives to go off salary. And so I had been without a salary for 1.5 years. And I started to look around. I looked at network marketing as being a viable thing that I could do on the side while I was founder, co-founder, and executive vice president of this company. And so I thought, okay, well, I could do network marketing on the side and build this up. And so I was definitely in the market, and I developed 3 criteria of how I was assessing what would be a great opportunity. Do you want to know what those are?
Yeah. Yes, we do. Right.
So the first one that I was uncompromised on, because I realized everything would stem from here, and that is that the product had to have a genuine value proposition. And so if you think about some companies, for example, one of the biggest in the world, I was listening to them give their presentation, and I realized that their value proposition really was something like this: you can come and order from our company and pay more than you would pay at the store for the same stuff. And I thought to myself, well, that's not a very good value proposition. But they said, but wait, there's more. If you can get other people to spend more than they would normally spend for the same stuff that they could get at the store, then you could eventually get your stuff for free. And if you did that enough, you could be rich. And I thought to myself, well, that's not a very good value proposition for product. And so that became, I knew that whatever company I identified with would have to have a genuine value proposition, meaning that the product itself could stand on its own and that people would want it and that it would serve or value its market. And so the second thing that I understood had to be is a critical piece, and that is the management team itself. The management team has to have basically you need the strongest management team you can find. And I realized that most of whether or not a company succeeds or fails relies first on the product value proposition and second on the management's ability to make wise decisions. And if you think of the growth rate of most companies, the reason they fall apart is because of poor decision making by the management team. And so I realized that the management team had to be structured and organized in a way in which it was extremely effective and essentially motivated and driven, purpose driven, to have their company succeed. And then the third aspect was the compensation plan had to be designed properly, because in a lot of companies, the compensation plans can work against you depending on certain behaviors. So for example, there's about 4 different types of pay plans that run in network marketing. And one of them is called a forced matrix. There's one called a breakaway. There's one called a binary, and then there's unilevel. And I did notice that almost every major company was a unilevel, and there wasn't any companies that were in the $1 billion range that were not unilevel plans. Okay. And now if you take a binary plan, for example, which is basically a 2-line organization, the problem with those is that if you say you have a rock star builder that you enroll and they go to town, and you have to keep pace with that person, because if you don't, then you're only paid on the volume of the lowest leg in percentage to the large leg. So you could have 100,000 people on your team and not earn a dime.
What do you mean by binary, just so that everyone understands that?
2 legs. Now, some professional people that are really good at networking and recruiting like those, because it's easy to train, right? Put one on the right, one on the left, and then you got your team. Our plan is obviously a little more complex, right? That you have to have 3 leaders and 6 leaders eventually to be presidential diamond. That sounds more daunting, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, more than 2, yeah.
I had people in binary plans that had 90,000 in volume, and if you understand doTERRA's comp plan, you realize that you're getting paid on all your volume. And so she was telling me what she was making with 90,000 volume and asking me what she would make in doTERRA. And I said, well, in doTERRA as a silver, you would make about $90,000 a year, which of course blew her mind. And because she was constantly fighting the percentage rates between the 2 legs. And so it's kind of fascinating. So compensation plans can work against you. Also, some companies build in a lot of rules that if you miss, the money goes into the corporation. And so they build more and more rules. And so a compensation plan, when I came in contact with doTERRA, my partners and I had 2 other partners, we spent a full 2 days breaking apart doTERRA's comp plan and rebuilding it on spreadsheets. So we would understand where everything went, how everything was paid. And of course, obviously I'm here, right? So you know what my conclusion was. But in terms of that, so my mind was wide open. And then there was the swine flu came through our neighborhood. And I was living in Spanish Fork. Well, I got to back up a little bit. When I first moved to this house in Spanish Fork, I pulled the van up, trying to hide from the neighborhood, and the entire neighborhood descended on our truck and unloaded it. And I walked into my bedroom, and there's a group of men putting my bed together. And somebody says, "So Dave, how's that startup of yours going?" And he goes, "Well, we were only supposed to go 18 months without salary, and it's been extending, so our savings are getting strained." And it turned out that was Dr. David Hill.
No.
He was putting my bed together, and then he took me around the house, and he said, "I used to live here. This used to be my house."
Really? So you live in Dr. Hill's house?
Right. And then he said, "But we didn't like it, so we moved down the street." So my claim to fame is I used to live in the house that Dr. Hill didn't like.
You didn't like it either, so it's okay. You're on par.
Right. So that was it. If you can imagine, that was right close to the start, because it was a couple of years later before I started to hear about doTERRA and understand who that was and connect the dots. But it was Kelly Anderson, my upline, that actually dropped off some breathe oil when our whole house was knocked out with this neighborhood illness. And I was afraid of the oil. I wouldn't touch it. It looked like black market contraband. I'd never seen anything in brown little bottles with names I didn't understand. And so Jennifer tried it. She got better in about 2 days, and the rest of us were wiped out for the whole month.
Oh, wow.
So she's like, and she kept telling me, you know, and just to give you a picture of why I was afraid of it. So she was dripping it in the humidifier. This is back before we knew how to use oils. Dripping brake oil in a humidifier, and she had a towel flipped over her head and over the humidifier. And every time I'd walk by, she'd go, "Ah!" And then she'd flick the towel back, and she'd look up and she'd go, "You need to try this. It's so good."
Brilliant. You're like, I'm okay. I'm okay.
I was like, I'm good.
We even had to
You need
buy
call
one.
someone. All right. So, but it was a couple. You know, it was a couple months later. It got close to Christmas, and I had started having some discomfort in my intestinal area, and it was it had been going on for about a month, and I decided, well, maybe that's serious. And so I went to Jennifer to find out, my in-home doctor, and I said, yeah, I've had this kind of pain in my abdomen for a month, and so then I was waiting for her to tell me that, you know, we need to rush you to the hospital or something like that. But she got this great big smile on her face, and she said, you know, the neighbor dropped off some more of those oils. Then she said, you know, that they say that peppermint's really good for the digestive system. And so we put a drop of peppermint in a little NyQuil swisher cup. And this is early days. We haven't quite bridged the gap yet. I swished it down, and sure enough, it soothed all that out. And that's when I knew. That's when I knew absolutely that I could market that product. I was like, wow, this is really powerful stuff. You know, and you know, from there it's done. One time, an executive of doTERRA asked me one time, Rod, what's your oil miracle? And I said, which one? There's literally hundreds. And I go, it's not so much that it was any one miraculous experience as it was just hundreds of small incidents, from cuts to, you know, to pains, to nausea, to, you know, all kinds of things that you normally experience in the household, and then having great or miraculous experience with the essential oils through you know, throughout that process. Mm-hmm. But I knew at that moment, I go, this is a product I could represent. And then they started, Kelly started talking to us more seriously about the business. And then one day she called up. Every month she would call and tell Jennifer how much her check was from doTERRA. So the clincher was, she called up and said, Jennifer, you never guess. My upline's sending me to Australia. She's buying me a ticket, and I made $800 from doTERRA. And she hangs up the phone, and my wife comes stomping into my office and pokes me in the chest and says, I want to do this. And so I told her, I said, okay, just wait. And that's when I brought some partners together. We broke down the comp plan. And then we were like, yeah, this is what we need to do. My team growth happened so quickly. I went silver in 4 months and gold in 6 months.
Wow.
And I went diamond I quit my job at 14 months. I could see that the momentum was, that it was my path. And I remember sitting in my office at my other company, feeling the sense of crickets, you know, like I was sitting in my office knowing that I was wasting every second that I was sitting there. And because I couldn't do doTERRA all during the day, it was a conflict of interest. And so I started leaving work right at 5 p.m. And I worked my business from the moment I stepped out the door till midnight. And it was just nonstop. I was on fire.
What year was that?
What's that?
What year was that?
That was 2010.
2010.
Wow.
So you've been with doTERRA 8 years. Can you hear me? So you've been with doTERRA 8 years then?
Yeah, 8 years. Yes. Yeah. Your connection breaks just a little bit once in a while.
But you went silver in 4, gold in 6, and diamond in
16 months.
16 months. Wow.
Yeah. Presidential diamond in 30 years.
Yeah. needs it? Who needs it? We've got a big...
So when did you go blue then? Like 2 months
I went
after that?
Blue Diamond 4 years ago.
4 years ago. And
So
you've been
I
blue diamond
actually-
for 4 years.
Yeah, I actually got stagnated at diamond. I don't know if you realize this, but I was the largest diamond in doTERRA too. I have this habit, so I have every intention of being the largest blue diamond in doTERRA, or in the largest presidential diamond in doTERRA. I found that it pays really well, so I haven't been that worried about it. But yeah, I went blue diamond 4 years ago, but interestingly enough, I was diamond for quite a while, and I had kind of maxed out the pay plan, meaning that my team was growing, but my check was staying the same, because I had maximized all the volume inside my structure, and so I realized, okay, I've got to make some changes, and I was actually doing some strong pondering and consideration, i.e., prayer, and I got the impression that I needed to open the space. That was the issue. I had overloaded myself with mentoring and things like that where my schedule was just packed, but I wasn't really wasn't making myself available for growth. And so I immediately cleared off everything. And within 2 months, after I went diamond, 2 of my main leaders quit. And so I had, they were all silvers. And then 2 of them quit. And so, but within 2 months of that open the space message, I had the telephone go off. Within 2 months of that, I actually had, I had 4 new leaders come on board that were moving fast, highly committed people. Wow. And so it was probably, it was probably within a year or year and a half from that time that I went blue diamond.
Okay.
And now the same thing is happening for me now at presidential diamond. So I have 6 legs, and just a couple of my leaders just haven't moved into platinum level leadership yet. And so we've been working with them, and it's, my 6th line has just started to break through. They're starting to attract some really powerful people. And I just put a house in Texas, in Dallas, Texas, specifically to support that leg. And of course, so I'm anticipating, and again, it's another one of those inspirational moves where I'm responding, and so I anticipate, and not only that, within the last week, I've had 4 new builders come on board. I mean, leader quality people.
Wow.
That I've enrolled over the last 3 days. Wow. And so I can tell that same movement that has happened for me in each major rank advancement is starting to happen. So I can tell we're into the final lines of, you can call me a presidential diamond. And then I can hang out with the cool kids. Instead of coming to the secondary meeting, I can come to the first meeting.
Well, it's not like that in Europe. Yeah. All the diamonds go to the same meeting.
Right. Yeah. They separate us out. The presidentials get a day, and then the blue diamonds can come in and pick up the scraps, and then.
No, not like that.
Yeah, it's not like that.
Not yet, anyway.
They put us up in a luxury hotel. I'm just.
Yeah.
So, how many diamonds and blue? Do you have any presidents in your team and diamonds? How many do you have? Any diamonds do you have in your team?
Yeah, I have 33 diamonds,
wow.
And I have 7 blue diamonds and 1 presidential diamond.
Wow.
Amazing. So, you obviously, we've told, and our team know this already, that you created the Edge success kind of structure, which is so good. So I was wondering if you could kind of give us a summary of what you saw as the key points of how to build a successful business, because you've simplified it, I feel.
And you gave that to doTERRA, didn't you?
And you gave,
for free.
Yeah, thank you for giving that to doTERRA.
So they could create empowered success.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Why would you do that? You could have sold it to them. It makes no sense to me. It's so nice.
Well, they bought share success, so they weren't ready to buy edge success too. But no, we talked to him, and eventually we could just see, for me myself, one of if you guys ever heard of the Code of the West, right? The Cowboy Code of the West.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
One of those statements of the Code of the West is you ride for the brand. And so I've and kind of the cool thing about the Code of the West is it's just kind of a fundamental, so many people are self-interested. They come to the party and it's only what benefits them, and they think about what's in it for me, that kind of thing. And it creates that kind of behavior, creates a very interesting culture. And one of the things that I recognize is that our system, as great as it was creating division. And and there was started to be competitive cultures between the two types of systems, and even three systems. And so at one point, as soon as I started to recognize fissures in my team, I realized that unity is the most important principle for building long-term, for health and joy inside your teams and things like that. And so we were willing to sacrifice what we had created for the sake of the brand and for the sake of unity, and to bring our teams together, allow everything to come together in a collaborative way, so that everybody could participate in, and ultimately that we could all go to a meeting and the conversations wouldn't be vastly different. That everyone's kind of referencing the same the same fundamental backbones and things like that. And so the good part of that is that did allow us to create an experiment for years to really perfect our processes. And most of those processes have been adopted into the new system. And along with great ideas from other great builders throughout the company.
If you like Empowered Success, then just between us.
Between us and our whole team.
And our whole team. He's not answering.
Yeah.
I think he loves
Good
it.
avoidance.
That, and I don't understand English very well.
Yeah. No, that's very kind of you to give that to doTERRA.
Oh yeah, it was a great decision and well timed, and I've been able to participate on the committees of most of the new things as well. So I've had continued input as well.
Amazing.
So it's I don't always get my way, but so I can only promise you a mostly perfect system.
Well, that's why we've got you now, to just tell us, the perfect system.
The gaps. That's good. So you wanted me to outline the pathway a little bit.
Yeah. Yes, please. The pathway that you've perfected. that one.
Right. That's great. Well, the core of our system is based on a principle called the 3 doors of openness. And that's basically when you're approaching people, how do you perceive the prospect? And if you have no order for this, then of course that leads into all kinds of frustration and difficulty. And in fact, a lot of lack of skill or lack of result is just a manifestation of not understanding the concepts of openness and how to open doors in sequence in terms of human psychology. Right, so the way your prospect is thinking about things, and so that those doors, the very first door is open to learn, and so if you could imagine when you approach somebody that they have a door, their mind, and that doorway is either open or closed, and if it's closed, we have different ways of referring to this closeness. Sometimes we refer to their barriers, their shields are up, the resistance, all of this is the door manifesting itself as closed. Now the key is, can the door open And you have to be able to open those doors without force. And so, for example, if I was walking up to a neighbor's home to a closed door, which it's going to be, then obviously I would knock or I would ring the doorbell, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the way most of us approach it, we walk up to the house, we bang on the door, and then we kick it as hard as we can until it opens. So, and obviously if we do that, then there's extreme consequences at the other end.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, unintended events and reactions. Now, on the other hand, if you learn how to ring the doorbell or knock on the door politely, then you have moments to gain interest and trust on whether or not the door opens to allow you to pass or not, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you come up, your very first objective, that first door is open to learn. And so when I'm walking towards somebody, basically my first inclination is to find out whether or not they're even open to natural health and if they want to learn more about it. Mm-hmm. And so my very first question that I use is, I'm just curious, are you open to natural forms of healthcare? And immediately I've just rung the doorbell. And at that point, there might be a moderate conversation that occurs that'll determine whether or not they're like, oh yeah, that's absolutely me. My door's wide open. Let's go. And now once you walk through there, then comes the second door, which is, are you open to use the product and get a membership account? Mm-hmm. And so this becomes your closing, basically. You have to present. If they're open to learn, they're going to allow you to teach them about the oils, but they haven't agreed to buy. Now, the way you know this is many of you have probably taught classes, and then you get to the end, and all of a sudden they're like, I don't have any money. Mm-hmm. Or I don't know when I do that. Let me think about it. I need to ask my husband. I'm not sure if, so in other words, you're standing at a door, and many people haven't realized that you have to ring the doorbell on the second door, which is, hey, are you open to use these? Now, if somebody's giving you objection, it's because they don't understand the value, or they've pre-calculated or predetermined what your offer is without understanding it. And so they are actually afraid of commitment. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people want what you have, but they're afraid of the commitment because they're afraid of the membership, or they're afraid of, what if my kids get a hold of the oils or something? There's unresolution that's causing that door to be closed. And so if you learn how to present properly and build openness throughout, then the close should actually come easy. Mm-hmm. Because contrary to popular belief, everyone has the money. There isn't anybody that doesn't have the money. I was as broke as you could possibly get in our area when the doTERRA was presented to me, but I still was able to purchase it based on a timeline when the money became available, which was the following week. And so if you think about that, when somebody tells you they don't have the money, what they're telling you is that they've assigned other priorities to it. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you right now, 50 cents is too much money for anyone that doesn't understand the value of what they're getting. And, think about how you've reacted. You're not just randomly throwing euros out the door. Even if you have the money, I mean, you're not wanting to depart with your money unless you're exchanging it for something you value. And but if you really value it, it doesn't matter how much it is. Poor people would buy diamond kits if they understood everything that it meant, and they didn't lack commitment, or they didn't lack the desirability to make commitment, which is, I'm going to commit to the business. Like if you think about it, this is the lowest cost franchise in history. It's $2,700 and $100 a month. That's compared to another franchise, which would be $2 million and $200,000 a month. And so in that context, if somebody was saying, okay, I'm going to buy a McDonald's or I'm going to buy a KFC, or I'm going to buy a doTERRA business.
And you can do it. Most of our people have done it cheaper. They bought a Home Essential kit rather than buying a diamond kit.
Right.
Mhm.
And so it's now when you come through, when a lot of times people enroll people, or the outside perception is that people join network marketing for the business, which isn't the case. And in fact, about 90% of the time, people are not joining for the business.
Mhm.
And so in that regard, all the statistical stuff that you hear about network marketing is actually not true, because it's not
relevant to doTERRA, yeah.
Right. It's not based on fundamentals of any sort. In fact, if you ever want a success comparison, if you think of people that go into real estate, they go into real estate on purpose with the intention of selling real estate. However, 85% of real estate agents with licenses never sell a single property.
Is that right?
And so if you think about that in context, look at doTERRA's membership as a whole. 85% of people never enroll another person. Well, 85% of people, or 90% of people, don't even have the intention of enrolling another person. And in other words, they've come in to use the product, and then they, for whatever reason, maybe they think it's nice or something like that, but they're not really willing to dedicate anything. The idea of money is nice, but the idea of actually committing or again, it's a fear of commitment, right? The idea that, okay, if I'm going to do the business, I have to actually talk to someone. I have to open the oil bottle in front of somebody and put it under their nose. Or if I'm Natalie Goddard, I put it on my finger and walk right up to your forehead and swipe it.
Is that what she does?
Yeah, that's what she did to Seth. I took Seth over to her house to learn about the business. And all of a sudden, she stands up and she has some Serenity oil or something, and she walks right up to him and swipes it right under his nose. And it just stunned him. He just froze. And then he stumbled back, and then he sat down on the sofa and just sat there in dead silence.
It worked. It made him
It
serene.
stunned him, yeah. He told me it was a spiritual experience. When I was talking to him about it later, I go, dude, that was a pretty dramatic reaction. He goes, when she did that to me, I had a spiritual experience, and I didn't understand what was happening. And so I just sat down and kind of tried to process what was going on. But you think about that. That's the oils being administered by a master. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And think about that. If you took your oils around and opened them up and applied them to people with intention and purpose and love, that's pretty effective. And I believe the oils have an independent energy about them. And I would go to say that they're close to life itself. And now I just say that from 8 years of interaction with oils. As I've been interacting with the oils, I believe they are life. And so I believe because of that, I believe they respond to your intention. And so if you're extraordinarily negative, I think the oils can respond to that. And I think if you're extraordinarily positive and intentional and believing, in other words, you apply the oils with faith and things like that, I believe that I believe that the oils respond in a magnitude different way. And I think the more we're learning about oil chemistry, that's probably not too far-fetched about how, because even water reacts to your mood. Mm-hmm. And where they've demonstrated how if you're projecting much anger on it, it actually crystallizes the water into a different chemical structure. It's pretty amazing. We did some experiments with rice and discovered the same types of things, where we took a bag of white rice, 2 bags. One of them we wrote all kinds of negative, nasty words on, and the other one we wrote all kinds of light and positive words on, and we separated and put them apart for a few days. We came back, the ones with the negative words on it were black and molded. And the other bag was white and just pristine. And so if you think about that, getting that door open, that second one, are you open to use, is probably, your effectiveness is probably going to relate to your love and transmission and attitude about the oils and the energy that you're bringing to the table when you share them with people. And now if that event goes positively, the next door is almost open, which is, are you open to share the oils with others and earn an income with doTERRA? And many people stop at the second door because of fear. If some people don't have any trouble telling people about the oils, they don't have any trouble giving them oils, but they have trouble closing sometimes. And sometimes people don't have any trouble closing, but they'll never ask them about the income. And I've been amazed in how many meetings I'm in that where I'll just mention that there's an income opportunity, and I'll have somebody in the room say, "You can make money doing this?" Well, they've just said that their third door is open. And so immediately you can progress to working down that road. So
how do you share,
what's that?
how do you share the business opportunity?
Basically, it probably wouldn't surprise you that I have most people that I enroll are expecting to go on LRP, full qualified LRPs. They all buy kits, and they're all expecting and excited to do.
What kit do they buy? What kit do they buy?
Well, two of them, the two that I just in the process of entering are natural solutions kits.
Okay.
And most of them would do the diamond kit if they felt like they could afford it at this. But we know what that means. Yeah. You know, I'll ask them 6 months from now, and they'll say, "Why didn't I buy the diamond kit?"
That's true.
Yeah. And so yeah, the other kit I think was a home essentials kit.
Yeah.
And I think the only reason that was is because they're college kids.
Okay.
And so and so we just talked about it, but they're all four are ready to build, and they're already seeking mentoring. In fact, all four of them have texted me over the last 2 days about what are we, what's next? I have this question.
How did you get into that? How did you get into that stage?
Well, here's the funny part. I haven't had any of them to a class yet.
How did you do it?
That is the magic. I don't know. No, I'd say one of the things that I do is almost all of these are relationships that I've developed. So it's been relationships of trust. So for example, I was introduced, I met somebody at a network meeting about 8 years ago. And then about 5 years ago, or 6 years, or about 2 years ago, he introduced me to a chiropractor. And I talked to him a little bit. We kept trying to get together. And then about 2 days ago, the chiropractor called me and said, my daughter walked into doTERRA directly to join. And I told her, I know this guy, you got to join.
Amazing.
Right. And so the one that I'm in the process of entering right now, about 30 years ago, I worked for a cattle ranch in Montana, and he was one of the cowboys on the ranch. And he contacted me on Facebook because I had posted about all my world travels and stuff like that. And he just sends me a message and he goes, Rod, what do you do? And then we had a conversation about doTERRA, and he got really interested in it, and it found out that this is his wife's calling. She's into natural health and things like that, and has been looking for something like this, and has been using other brands of essential oils. And I talked to her for the first time today. And yet they're enrolling as builders on Loyalty Reward.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
I mean, so if you find someone, let's say, that's not open, so the first door is closed, do you walk away and that's it, or do you what?
No, if you ring a doorbell and nobody's home, you come back eventually.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right. I've learned that no's are never no's forever.
Mm-hmm.
And the circumstances change, and people have life circumstances. And so usually I don't view no's as no's, I view them as not no's.
Perfect. And then when you said that throughout the class, you build openness for them to buy. So it's obviously educating, but are there any other tips you would share, to help build that openness for the class?
Yeah, I think mostly it's about caring and loving for other people. And basically, if you bring value to other people when you interact with them, that's how you build a network. So you'd ask me, how is it that you get people? Well, these people are all a result of networking that's been taking place for years.
Yeah.
And so in that regard, even though I just met Summer today for the first time, the one that's going to build, it was the relationship from 30 years ago was reestablished last week.
Yeah.
And of course, she built trust in me, or he built trust in me to her. And then by the time we're visiting, they'd already made all the decisions.
Of course, yeah.
And so if you think about it, this is why your character and everything are so important in the term of the way you treat other people and how whether or not you're an attentional networker. So I don't view myself as a prospector. I'm actually a terrible prospector.
Wow.
And but I am an excellent networker. And the difference between is prospecting is direct selling. That's when I'm running around trying to find the next sale, right? Networking is when you're going around making the next friend. And so when you say today, I'm going to get up today and contact 2 people about oils, what I do is I say, I'm going to contact people, I'm going to make new friends today. In other words, I'm adding 2 new people to my network. And now those people may never enroll, but obviously a relationship leads to a relationship, which leads to trust, which usually has somebody begging to build, by the time. But again, this is a process. It takes time. But for me, I've discovered that networking is the key to wealth in your future. Money itself, you have to realize that money has nothing. Money is nothing. Money is an idea. Some people like to call it energy or other things. I don't even think money has energy. Money is people's interpretation of value. And so the longer a person doesn't understand that concept is the longer they'll struggle with money. So for example, if you generally hate people and you're rude to people, then it's probably very difficult for them to ever trust you, and they will never. People are the master of money. In other words, and the way to prove this to yourself is go and drop a $20 bill on the floor and then ask it to jump back in your wallet. And you can stand there. You can do all kinds of things. Jump around, chant at it, pray over it, tell it to use its energy to jump back in your wallet. And there it will sit. And the only way that paper will ever get off the floor and into your pocket is if someone else picks it up and puts it in your pocket, or you reach down yourself and pick it up and put it in your pocket. In other words, you are the master of the transaction of money. And whether or not somebody gives it to you is dependent on the relationship that you develop with somebody. If you get into a presentation and they flat out don't trust you, they're never going to build with you. They're probably going to look on ways and getting you out the door as fast as you can. But if you come into the room and you provide love and value to people and you let your love and your light shine, per se, you use the power of the oils and you share your exuberance and love about it, your closing ratio would probably go from 1 in 10 to 9 in 10. Just from the way that you approach it. But I have understood, like every single major opportunity I have ever had, including businesses, including doTERRA, is the result of relationships that I had created, relationships of trust and value. And so if you think about it, Kelly was my neighbor, and we had lots of interactions together as neighbors. Our kids were friends. And then so when we would have listened to her where we wouldn't have listened to somebody else that just knocked on the door, for example. And why did that happen? Because we established the friendship and the relationship. And now the end result, now some people might disagree with me on this, but you do have to remember that as one of the largest blue diamonds in the entire company, my team is extremely solid, and I live the lifestyle. I have the network marketing dream lifestyle. I mean, it literally doesn't matter if I show up to work or not. And my paycheck, ironically, is mostly the same. And well, that's a result of relationship building. And the people that have come on, I concentrate on developing strong relationships of trust and love with my core leader base. And as a result, people don't just randomly leave our team. I mean, we have a few people here and there, but for the most part, people stay because this is where they're fulfilled. This is where they have love and appreciation, and the growth. And so I know other people that are really great recruiters, but have very little relationships with their teams, and then they're constantly trying to keep those teams together. And then that results in a lot of work. And so developing a network, remembering relationships, and emanating positivity and value, love, light, versus resentment, darkness, ill motive, other negative things that you could think about when you get around people. Like if you're trying to get people to buy things that they don't need or won't serve them, right? That's not very effective. After that transaction is over, if you're successful, then they're probably going to resent you for it. But on the other hand, if you carefully build trust and value and you assess their needs and you help people get what they need, sometimes it's more than they were planning on spending, but they love you for it.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I love that. Someone's just said here, I love this advice, valuable advice. I love that. I love it. And yeah, I totally agree with it. That's brilliant advice. Lindsay and Daniel just put a question. I don't know if you can answer. Do you have a PowerPoint presentation you do on the business when discussing it with someone, or do you just chat openly about it?
I use the build guides.
Perfect. The
Yeah,
Empowered Success or Edge Success?
I use the Empowered Success one.
Okay, cool.
But I use it as a backup. Generally, what most of that conversation is about what they want.
Yeah.
What is it they're looking for? Things like that. What kind of needs? What kind of dreams? What could they do? What would you do if this? If you could build a side business, type of thing. What are they chasing? What are their dreams? And then I use the documents just as credibility and a way to pinpoint, the 5 different ways that they earn. Retail, fast start bonus, power 3, unilevel leadership bonuses.
So you keep it quite simple.
Right. Yeah, most of it's an interactive. I would have to say that I don't give a lot of formal information. I give I respond to questions usually, and I ask a lot of questions.
Okay. To try and make it more tailored to them.
Right. Here's the motto that I use. Nobody likes to sell, and nobody likes to be sold.
Yeah.
Everyone loves to buy. And if they are talking, they are buying. And if you are talking, you are selling.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Great quote.
They are talking.
Did you make that quote up? We're gonna quote that one.
I made that up. Yeah.
Good, Rod.
Rod's 2018. I like it.
Everyone likes. I like that.
Make sure it's accurate. That's not exactly what you said, babe.
I know, right? It's
got to be exactly what you said.
Quickly as I wasn't touch typing. That's based on the big thing, isn't it? When you're sampling someone, and talking about themselves, and then it's not like you're pushing anything on them ever. They end up asking you for the product from the beginning.
Right. I found if sometimes the more open space you have in a conversation, the more they allows their minds to process. For example, if we were talking, I'd probably say something like, "Do you know what essential oils are?" And then they would respond, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'd say, "Yeah, basically they're extracts from plants, plant medicine." And then they're And then they go on about that. And then I said, and then I might ask them, so do you know how to use them, or how have you used them in the past? And they'll say whatever they say. And then I'll just go quickly over 3 ways. Yeah, you can put them on the body, you can breathe them in, and you can actually eat some of them. and basically you'll find through the conversation, especially if it centers on what their issues are.
Yeah.
Like if you had a natural product, how would you want it to help you? Well, we've been having, my daughter has a lot of, digestive issues or something like that. And then if we concentrate on that, or you can find out what their real needs are, then you can concentrate on those specific products. And you'll find that by the end, most of the time, they're anxious to buy them.
That's brilliant. Now, a few people have asked for your quote and they want us to post it. So
it was this, wasn't it?
I might need it again.
If they are talking, they are buying. If you are talking, you are selling.
Right.
Right.
So it starts out.
When they are talking, they are buying. When you are...
What's say it? What's about to
I was about to say it. Sorry, what?
Go for it,
Nobody likes to sell, and nobody likes to be sold. But everyone loves to buy.
Good
if
quote.
you are talking, you are selling. If they are talking, they are buying.
You're talking, you're selling. If they're talking, they're buying. Okay, so they still the other way around. Got it. Okay, nailed it. Thanks.
We'll post it. We'll post it on the group for everyone.
Be quoting that. You're going to be quoted now all over the internet, as well as having videos.
I got a cheeky question.
Okay, then I've got 2.
Very quick.
Cheeky.
What's the
Ooh.
what am I going to say? What's the maximum you can earn a blue diamond? How do you maximum?
Hypothetically
speaking, if someone was to be maximised the compound of blue diamond,
blue in the universe,
what would you make?
Yeah, from what I understand, as a blue diamond, one of the highest paid blue diamonds that I'm aware of is making, I think, over 100,000, about 120,000 a month.
A month.
Dollars.
Wow.
Yeah.
I could see why you wouldn't need to push presidential. I could see
Right. Right. When I was talking to them, they basically said, they basically said, there isn't. We already earn as much as almost all the presidential diamonds, so there isn't.
No.
Blue diamond's kind of nice, you're kind of under the radar a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't ask you to do much.
I get it. Smart.
Presidential, they start asking you to do everything.
Yeah, really do. You are smart. So just a real quick couple of questions. I wondered what you do. So say someone says they want to do the business, you do the business chat with them, and how much then you help them do their first class? Is that kind of how you get them going, and then do you mentor them every week, or what's your kind of real quick?
Right. For me personally, ever since that Open the Space event in my life, I actually don't do any formal mentoring anymore.
Okay,
so I
even
don't,
with your new builders.
Right. I don't. It's not a standard part of my program where you would have a weekly portion of my time reserved. However, you do have any time reserved, or any of my core leaders can contact me at any time, and I'll respond. And they know that I'll respond within whenever I'm available. Like if they call me during a meeting or something like that, it might take me a little bit to get back to them, but I usually get right back to them within an hour or two. And so with that, I just if you think about it in terms, most people can only handle about a dozen people, and so if you look at your growth, if you have a little team, of course you can deal with everybody. Mm-hmm. And when you have about 100 people, then you can probably deal with everyone that's actively LRP ordering. And if you have you start to get up and you start getting into leadership, it's always going to be about a dozen people. And so you just have to keep moving that list up on priorities. So now my list of a dozen might not actually be all my key leaders, for example, because some of them are blue and almost presidential diamond themselves. Mm-hmm. And they might have some important issues, so it's not difficult to get a hold of me. But I would probably put a priority on the 4 new builders that I have currently.
Yeah.
And I found that the development of people to stay and build on your team is probably in a direct relationship to how much time you commit to them. And so I keep about a half a dozen people that I'm pretty heavily engaged with. And it's not formal mentoring, it's usually ongoing conversation. So I'll usually open up a Facebook thread, for example, where they can communicate a report, or some of them use texting or Facebook Instant Messenger, things like that. And we can have ongoing real-time things, and they can keep their things right in front of me. And I found that people that are active always know what they need to know, meaning they'll ask for what they need to know.
Yeah.
And if I have somebody on a weekly mentoring program and they're not committed to their business, then that meeting will go largely the same every single week. So it's not really a productive use of my time or theirs. And so I figured if they have things going on, they'll have plenty to talk to me about.
Yeah,
and if they haven't done much, I might reach out. So my basic building philosophy is invite everyone, work with those that move towards you, mentor the committed. Okay. And so that automatically.
Hold on, that's another quote.
Hold
Another
on.
quote there, Rod. What's that quote?
Invite everyone.
That's so good.
Powerful.
Whoa.
Right. This is my building method, by the way. It's in fact, with that phrase alone, you could build a successful network marketing company.
Say it again.
So say it again. One more time.
Invite everyone.
Yeah.
Work with those that move towards you. Mentor the committed. Now think of what most people do. Most people invite some. They work with anyone that responds. And they dedicate all kinds of mentoring time to a host. And so when I look at that, and then the expansion of that is those people usually get stuck about silver, and they can't break through to gold for some reason. It's because they haven't developed leadership on their team, and why they haven't been able to do that is they haven't realized that they have a field. All of us have about the same capacity, whether we're just starting or whether we're presidential diamond. Our capacity is about the same. And the problem is a new builder will fill that capacity and then become overwhelmed trying to maintain or scale that capacity. But as you advance these ranks, all we're doing is we start prioritizing where that space is focused on. And so that becomes a huge factor on whether or not you can scale to advance.
That's brilliant.
Well, some great gems there, Rod.
I love that. And then my last question is, you said how your business goes through flows. Like, do you know what it is that suddenly makes it flow? Is it your mindset, do you think? Is it you're ready? What is it when you said, you spend this energy?
It's definitely your mindset and belief, basically. And belief falls on 3 areas. It's going to be about the product, it's going to be about the company, and it's going to be about yourself. And so if you lack belief in these areas, that's got to be your area of focus, or you won't project the energy. So for example, if you lack belief in yourself, which is the most common one, then you're going to constantly hold yourself back as not being worthy. You're not going to talk to that specific prospect because you're going to think that you're wasting their time or something like that, or that you're not good enough, or you couldn't lead them, or something like that. And so you have to build belief in yourself. Just to give you an example, one of my qualifying legs, it took me 3 years to get them to commit to build. So they ordered from me as a result of a networking meeting that I was at. The husband purchased, and then about a year later, he contacted me and said, my wife is interested in the oils. She's fallen in love with them. And I go, that's great. And he asked, can you come down to my house and teach you more about them? So I came down, sit in the house, and she asked me very direct questions. She was clearly keeping control of the conversation. And then she kept informing me over and over and over again that we could never do network marketing because it would harm our reputations as professionals. And so there's just no way that's going to happen. Okay. And I just said, okay, great. And then they said, then she got up to go to the bathroom, and he leans over. He's still at the table. He leans over and he goes, "Can you make 6 figures at this?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And he goes, he does. And then she came out of the bathroom, and then he immediately went back to relax. And just like he was. And then she came and sat down, and she goes, "Okay, our friend is here, and he's not going to want to hear about this, so you can leave now." Okay, so that was the conversation. Okay, and then I just looked at him and I said, "Well, maybe he wants to learn about oils." And he's like, "No, this is a longtime friend. You can leave now." And so they ushered me to the door. Well, he called me a couple more times asking questions about the oils, and then a few months later, out of the blue, she calls me and she goes, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what I was thinking." She goes, "We're all in. We want to build this. We want to." It just went crazy. Well, apparently she's gone to some meeting where the speaker said, "Why do you care what other people think about the way you choose to earn money?" And something about that just really drove home to him. And they're like, "Yeah, why are we letting other people?" Because the guy would say, "So your uncle tells you can't make money that way. So why don't you say, 'Okay, that's great. I won't do that, Uncle. Then, but why don't you send me a house payment?'" And then your friend says, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. You should do that. That's a terrible way to earn money or do business." And then you say, "Okay, great. I'd be great to do, but why don't you send me the car payment? And then I'll be happy to not do that." And something about that just clicked for her. They're almost Blue Diamond. In fact, I had a conversation yesterday about their Blue Diamond and Presidential Diamond strategy. So I just want you to know, from that experience, it was clearly mindset that was creating the barrier and holding her back. And I could give you lessons for all day long about how we evolve them through leadership too at different phases. But
wow.
Well, we've taken up.
We have taken a lot of your time.
Thank you, Rob. There was just one thing, just quickly, if you could. If someone's stuck at silver, what would you recommend they do to advance?
If they're stuck at silver, it's because they're not training their builders.
Okay.
Okay. Now the retort to that might be, "Well, I don't have any builders." And my retort to that is going to be, you don't have builders because you're not taking the time to train people. Okay. Now think about that, because most people, one, they doubt their own abilities, especially in the early part, so much so that the last thing they want to do is teach somebody how to do what they don't know how to do. And then they end up doing it all themselves because they can't get anyone else to do it. But the reality is what's happening is they're spending all their time enabling the existing people by building for them, and by not allowing themselves time to really sit down and commit people to build. And then once somebody builds, a lot of times they'll say, "Yeah, I want to earn some money on that." Well, great. All you got to do is classes, and off they go. And instead of getting right in with that person and helping them overcome their fears. Now, it's more than just doing the activities. You have to understand that person's mind. Because remember, we've just identified that it's the mindset that's creating the shutdown. It's nothing else. And so if you're not getting into that person's mind, for example, I just came from a meeting in Arizona. Had a leader that's hasn't hit silver in 5 years. She's been with us for actually since the beginning. All 7 years she's been with us. Hasn't been able to hit silver. Barely maintains elite. And as we got around the table, I just felt strongly about being a little tougher on her. And I said, because the person didn't go to convention, and you guys got to understand, if you're going to build, you're going to go to convention, and there isn't hardly, I can't think of a single person that advances ranks that hasn't been to convention or isn't making the events the priority of their business building. It is the core of building the business. It is the place that mind shift happens. In fact, if your entire effort was dedicated to making sure your team members were at events, then you probably wouldn't have trouble having builders on your team. And so when you think about it, it's coming around the table, and I kept pinging her. I let her know it was going to be tough. when I got to her, because we were going around doing goals for each person. And I said, and by the way, we just came off the convention in which you were not at. And then as we got around and we drilled it, and again, I'm gentle in this. When I'm tough, it's a gentle tough where you feel the loving rubber boot. And what it turned out was, what it got down to is she was never willing to commit to advancing because she had received health benefits from the government.
Ah.
She exceeded too much money, then that was going to go away. And I go, don't you get the oxymoron of that if you actually made more money, that you wouldn't need the assistance? Mm-hmm. And she knew that was the right thing, but because she was so afraid of losing it by earning too much money, she's never allowed herself to advance, right? Mindset. Mm-hmm. And so we actually got her to make a goal and declare a date for silver for the first time in her entire life. Which was a very emotional moment for everyone that was there that had recognized her struggle, because this is very much a person that would be extraordinarily blessed by the income. And she's been there all the time, coming to all the meetings and things like that. And so we were just tough on her, helping her realize that. She reached out, claimed that silver. The very next day, she showed up to the open house in a silver spirit. She brought a leader, a builder for me to meet with, and we started discussing the strategy of their team development and how they were going to work together. In other words, she came to me like a silver leader.
Wow.
And it was all from a click that happened the night before.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
It was amazing.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much, Rod.
You guys are welcome.
Thanks for taking up so much
You're
time.
wonderful. Thank you. Those tips were amazing. We've quoted you. We've got your quotes down here. We're going to be putting on our Facebook.
Well, I only hope I can be like you guys when I grow up.
You're not. Are you going to Europe leadership? You might not be.
You probably are coming to. Are you coming to Europe?
Oh yeah. I haven't been to the Europe leadership. Was that the question?
It's the first one is next week, so I just wondered if you're coming.
Oh really? Oh my gosh, that would be awesome to be at.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So.
It's going to be exciting. Yeah. Europe's growing.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Rod. Let's have a look. Everyone's making comments. Rod, thank you for your humour and fantastic skill sharing. Great call. Thank you so much. Thanks, Rod. Love the quotes. And back here, I said thanks for the advice.
Wow, getting loads of quotes. Lots of love here, Rod.
Lots of love from our team. They're loving it. I feel like I learnt a lot as well. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, you bet.
Really appreciate your time.
I hope to see you soon, mate.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you guys.
See you, Rod.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.